Have you ever heard the phrase drinking water from a fire hose? It's a lot to try to take in, and this is a passage that's like drinking from a fire hose. And James, writing to the early church, is giving us a lot to contend with in terms of what faith in action looks like. What does Christian behavior look like? And so this is going to be a different structure than I typically preach with, where I'm going to kind of walk us through bit by bit, a couple verses at a time. Sherry, I should have told you this. Sorry. And so I'm doing that this morning. And we're going to try to digest it in a way that is a little easier. You're not going to be able to hold on to all of this. And so try to locate the one or two bits that feel like they resonate with you, where you're at in your faith, what strikes you with some conviction or some interest, and sit in that a bit. And so as you follow along and as we move through this text, be ready to drink from that fire hose, and thankfully we'll then end with communion and be able to sort of rest in that moment. This passage begins, every generous act of giving with every perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of lights, with whom there is no variation or shadow due to change. In fulfillment of his own purpose, he gave birth to us by the word of truth, so that we would become a kind of first fruits of his creatures. Have you heard of this call and response before? Have you been prompted in this way? I say, God is good, and you say, all the time. And then I say, all the time, and you say, God is good. Yeah, that's often said in many traditions. And it's to assert a core theological conviction that God is indeed good all of the time. And if God was not good all of the time, we come into a tension with a God worthy of our worship. No, God is worthy of our worship because we will say God is good all the time, that every good gift comes from God. All good things come from God. We'll lift that up not just in the scriptures, but in worship because we believe that. We will say that every perfect gift is from above. We believe that if you can point to something good in your life, its origin is from God. And in reverse, when there's something not good, bad, evil, but it's not from God. God, who is all good, encompassing all good, does not dole out evil. Evil exists as a part of this broken world. Where there is good, that is where God is. God's nature is unchangeable, and God's nature is that of light and generosity and goodness. And God shows God's goodness most clearly through the incarnation of Christ, this idea that the Word was born into the world that we could have immediate and authentic connection with God through Christ. Verse 19, you must understand this, my beloved brothers and sisters. Let everyone be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to anger. For human anger does not produce God's righteousness. Now, being angry points us towards problems. When we experience anger, what's happening is we're perceiving some type of threat. It's not bad to be angry. It's not a negative emotion, but it's pretty hard to love folks in our anger. When our anger is rising, you can't get into someone's face and scream, I love you so much. Or, gosh, I love you, I want to hug you and serve you with this anger. No, it's those are opposed emotions at that point. James does not say, don't be angry. He says, be slow to anger. And we'll be more successful at being slow to anger when we've been quick to listen, when we've been slow to speak. Being quick to listen and slow to speak implies thoughtfulness and patience. We're often very reactive, defensive creatures. We probably have to fight some degree of biological impulse when we find ourselves getting angry, when our anger starts to rise. James's reminder is that it's our responsibility to subdue our anger, to manage it. We work through our anger, and we try our best not to let anger get the best of us, because often when we act in anger, that leads to some bad behavior, some violent tendencies. Verse 21, therefore rid yourselves of all sordidness and rank growth of wickedness. This is to say, in general, get rid of gross behavior, and welcome with meekness the implanted word that has the power to save your souls. Don't be gross. I am raising 2 sons, and I bet I'll have to say that from time to time. Don't be gross. Now, it's not to say that only boys are gross. I know that that's not true. I think our society almost expects or accepts a certain vulgarity with our boys and our men. I don't think God has that same standard. I think we often talk about gross behavior. I'm not talking about burping. I'm talking about objectifying and malice. Maybe something that would be referred to as locker room talk. I don't think God cares what room we're in when we're speaking. I think our words are to uplift and encourage, to be sources of love and growth and care. There's no room for gross language, wickedness. This is for all to hear, men and women alike. We're all guilty of this. We all have gossiped. We have all spoken poorly about someone behind their back. We've done and said things that are harmful to other people. We need to work on that. Be quick to listen, slow to speak. Welcome with meekness the word that has power to save our souls. It's a humbling posture we take on when we move towards God. We bow our heads. We kneel before Jesus. We sometimes can be guilty of feeling a little entitled, expectant that God's grace will be for us. I think it's true that God will always extend grace to us, always. We don't want to abuse that truth either. And so with meekness, we move towards God. We get rid of the junk in our lives, and as we do that, as we are moving away from anything that is gross, we're actually making room in our being. And James says, fill that with God. As we get rid of the sordidness, the rank growth, that's where we have then room for God. Now here's the meat of this passage. Verse 22, but be doers of the word, and not merely hearers who deceive themselves. For if any are hearers of the word and not doers, they are like those who look at themselves in a mirror. For they look at themselves, and on going away, immediately forget what they were like. But those who look into the perfect law, the law of liberty, and persevere, being not hearers who forget, but doers who act, they will be blessed in their doing. Just do it. Have you heard that slogan before? It's Nike. It's Nike's slogan, just do it. And you all might know Nike is the Greek goddess of victory. And well, what James is describing is winning in faith. It's a winning faith when we're able to live lives that resemble Jesus and our behavior matches our beliefs. James is saying largely in this passage, just do it. Remember a few weeks ago when we had a pop quiz on the screen here? I asked you some basic Bible trivia about Christian behavior, though, and we kind of got to the point where it's great if you have the answers. It's not so great if we don't live those answers out into the world. James is really emphasizing that point. We know it's good to feed the hungry. It's better to feed the hungry. We know it's good to be slow to anger. It's better to be slow to anger. Faith, religion often gets stuck in being a set of ideas, beliefs, values. In the abstract, and they remain in the abstract. It needs to be brought down to the real world. That's where impact happens. That's where it becomes action. It needs to be concrete. Nike's slogan is perfect for the ministry of the church. Just do it. Help the poor. free the oppressed, make room at the table. These are all action words. Jesus was constantly in motion. It wasn't just lectures in a room. It was ministry out into the world. We are tempted to forget ourselves. We come here and we look at God, which is our appropriate mirror, because, friends, remember, we are made in the image of God. And so when we're here connecting with God, seeing God more clearly, we're seeing ourselves more clearly. And then we go out there into the world. We leave these doors, and we often forget. I forget, friends. I see God so clearly here, and then I get in my car, and I see the atrocious driving around me. And I'm not quick to listen. I'm not slow to speak. I'm quick to speak. I'm quick to honk. This is true. It's easy because the world just gets us in moving in a direction that maybe God doesn't have for us. Let's just get this stuck in our brains and our hearts. Just do it. Just do it. Don't overcomplicate it. Don't worry about how we do it. Don't worry about if we're doing it the right way. Just do it. Just love people. Just try to resemble Christ out in the world. Verse 26, our final part of the passage. If any think they are religious and do not bridle their tongues but deceive their hearts, their religion is worthless. Religion that is pure and undefiled before God the Father is this: to care for orphans and widows in their distress, and to keep oneself unstained by the world. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Just do it. Caring for orphans and widows, caring for vulnerable people. James says this is how we keep our religion pure. Y'all, this church is wonderful. I love this church. I love that we can point to so many things that we are doing out in the world, so many actions we're taking to care well for people. In general, the church of the world is not always an entity seen in this way. It's not seen by many people as a pure thing. Too many people have experienced harsh judgments or broken trust or a lack of good stewardship of its resources. Many people don't see the church as an entity that cares for people or a body that does much good for those around it. Many churches get stuck in just believe it mode. It remains an idea. Belief is important. Theology is important. Doctrine is important. Bringing Christ's love out into the world is the most important thing. Just doing it. Now, we can have it all. We can have good theology. We can have loving doctrine. We can have an inclusive stance on how we are the church. And we can read the Bible and lift up its authority. And then we can certainly live it out into the world and make an impact through real, honest action. It can't just ever be the first part. It can't only be thoughts and prayers. We have to move our feet. We have to use our hands. We have to live it out in the world. It has to be loving action in the world. We just do it. In the midst of our motion, to fuel our movement, we come to this table. We fill our bodies so our feet can move. We fill our hearts so our actions can be loving. We fill our minds so our words are thoughtful. And we fill our spirits so that we can continue the ministry of Jesus out in the world.